This is going next level very quickly. The battle between a liberal district attorney and the House Judiciary Committee's top Republican, Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg, versus Chairman Jim Jordan. They're going head-to-head over Donald Trump. I'm Harris Faulkner. You are in the Faulkner Focus. Bragg is targeting Jordan with a lawsuit and now a request for a restraining order. We know from DA Bragg's weak indictment that his thirst is strong for political vengeance against former President Trump. He's also brazen in his moves to stop Jordan from issuing a subpoena to a key attorney in the DA's office. A judge denied the immediate request for the restraining order, setting a hearing on the issue for next week. In Bragg's lawsuit, he claims Jordan is perpetrating an unconstitutional attempt to undermine the case against Donald Trump. Chairman Jim Jordan says Bragg is trying to obstruct a congressional investigation, and it's getting personal.
Alvin Bragg used federal funds to indict a former president for no crime, and then when we ask questions about it, when we want to investigate, he takes us to court. We want to talk to someone who left the DA's office a year ago, who went out and wrote a book on this very subject, did all kinds of interviews, and we're not allowed to talk to him to do our duty. They're obstructing our constitutional duty to do oversight.
National correspondent Brian Yennis on the story for us today. Brian.
Harris, in the 50-page lawsuit, Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg's office is asking a federal judge to issue a court order blocking the Republican-led House Judiciary Committee from issuing subpoenas to DA Bragg and employees of his office, particularly one of Bragg's former federal prosecutors, Mark Pomerantz. Now, Pomerantz led investigations into former President Trump's financial dealings before resigning and writing a book about his frustration that Bragg failed to move forward with his case. Now, House Judiciary Chairman Republican Jim Jordan subpoenaed Pomerantz to testify next Thursday. Bragg's office says Pomerantz's testimony is unconstitutional and will jeopardize the ongoing 34 felony count criminal case against former President Trump. The lawsuit reads in part, Chairman Jordan's demands, including his subpoena to Mr. Pomerantz, seek highly sensitive and confidential local prosecutorial information that belongs to the Office of the District Attorney and the people of New York. Basic principles of federalism and common sense, as well as binding Supreme Court precedent, forbid Congress from demanding it. Bragg's lawsuit comes after House Judiciary Republicans announced they are holding a hearing in Manhattan this upcoming Monday to interview victims of violent crime who have suffered, they say, under DA Bragg's progressive policies. Bragg's office says it's a stunt, something that Jordan disputes.
The witnesses we will have there Monday, they're not going to call it a stunt. They know what's happened to their families, to their community, to the businesses there in Manhattan.
A federal judge will hear arguments at a hearing set for next Wednesday whether or not to issue a temporary restraining order which would prevent Pomerantz from testifying the following day on Thursday. Harris.
Wow, we are down to TROs, restraining orders at this point. Brian, thank you very much. Jason Chaffetz, Fox News contributor and former Republican congressman for Utah. Great to see you in focus, Jason. You know, I mentioned the words making it personal because it feels this way with Alvin Bragg. The indictment against Trump, weak. He goes after him. And now going after a committee, you know, led by someone just like you led oversight. You guys have every right to investigate.
Yeah, I also used to be on the Judiciary Committee and served with Jim Jordan there. And guess what, District Attorney Bragg? If you take federal money, then you're going to be subject to federal oversight. And Jim Jordan, as the chairman of that committee, is providing that oversight. So, yeah, you're going to have to appear. You're going to have to succumb to the subpoena. Your staff is going to have to be able to answer questions. That's the way oversight in this country works. It's exactly the way the Democrats did this. And look at this case. You have a city prosecutor trying to go after somebody on a federal race. Of course the Judiciary Committee has jurisdiction of this. Of course they should be looking at this. And I think the hearing on top of this on Monday there in New York, that's going to be a fascinating one to see how the majority of cases have been reduced from felonies to misdemeanors under District Attorney Bragg.
You know, you mentioned those federal dollars being spent Chairman Jordan was on with me about 10 days ago, and what he and several other committees on Capitol Hill were doing was subpoenaing the documents from Bragg's office to show if there was any connection between the federal government, money, and that investigation into Trump. So does this lead you to believe that there might be some evidence of that, and that's why they want to talk to Pomerantz?
Well, that's the key question. That's why you got to be able to see the email traffic, the understanding between, was there coordination between the White House and the district attorney's office? Were there outside political influences there? I mean, you have this person, Mark Pomerantz, who literally goes out and writes a book. So
yes,
he's doing interviews, he's conducting investigations, but suddenly he doesn't have time to answer the questions of the committee that will be asked by Republicans and Democrats. That's a very, very weak, and it has absolutely no bearing on the case, in that you have to be able to answer those questions. If you're going to go out and write a book about it, yeah, you might be subject to congressional oversight, particularly if you're taking federal money.
In your experience, how does this go?
I think what the DA is trying to do is wrap them up in court and drag this out as long as possible. It's like boxers in a boxing match where one tries to bear hug the other one and just put them in the corner and just to see how long they can get the clock to go. That's what's going on here.
The Biden administration nearly in a panic over those leaked classified Pentagon documents, Jason. The leaks reveal secrets about our closest allies, making right now a very dangerous time for all of us. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin commenting on it for the first time here.
I was first briefed on the reports of unauthorized disclosure of sensitive and classified material on the morning of April 6th. But the documents that we are focused on thus far, 28th of February and the 1st of March. We take this very seriously, and we will continue to investigate and turn over every rock until we find the source of this and the extent of it.
Briefed not even a week ago, the documents sitting on the internet for weeks before that. I mean, you could see the dates laid out if you're reading the bottom of our screen there. I mean, we went from March to April. One intelligence official sums it up to Politico this way: the mood is anger. Chair of the House Foreign Affairs Committee says it doesn't get much worse than this. Let's watch.
Whoever did this, in my judgment, is guilty of espionage by giving away our secrets. And they're really giving the roadmap to our foreign adversaries. This is one of the worst leaks I've seen in terms of espionage, and I hope we can get to the bottom of it. This leak is going to cause enormous damage to our foreign relations and our foreign policy.
Sooner than he said that yesterday, it's happening. Huge concern over our relationships around the globe. Axios wrote, the leaks undermine two defining planks of President Biden's foreign policy: strengthening U.S. alliances and supporting Ukraine. Biden is overseas right now in Northern Ireland, part of the U.K., both an ally and a subject of some of that classified information. In fact, Jason, today, one U.K. lawmaker said he's worried about what Biden is going to say while he's over there because he's so prone to gaffes.
Yeah, that's an ongoing concern, but the leaks are serious. Congressman McCall is absolutely right. It is espionage. People's lives are on the line. Our international relationships are vital. There are far too many people that have classified clearances. One estimate is that between 1,000 and 5,000 people may have had access to these documents, and you could see how difficult that would be to hold those back. We never learned the lesson from Senator Patrick Moynihan, who about 30 years ago said far too many documents are classified. We need to revamp this system. Congress never did do that. They should have heeded his lesson back then, and they should probably go through and do that again. But people's lives are on the line. They have got to be able to put this back in and prosecute some people. It is punishable by death, by the way, espionage.
Yeah, I mean, when he said the word espionage, I thought, this is more than prison.
Yeah. This is death penalty type of stuff because people's lives are on the line. And imagine yourself, if you're in one of the clandestine services, if you're putting your life on the line, taking on, some difficult task overseas, and then you got some yahoo in the back room who's out there, revealing information or sensitive documents and information that puts your life in danger. Wouldn't you want that person to feel the pain of it? Yeah, unless the penalty is absolutely severe, off the charts, you're not going to be able to prevent this in the future. But if somebody thinks they're doing some favor to the world, they're not. They're making the world less safe.
Real quickly, I want to share this. Politico says the real issue here, this is unfathomable, but I know it's true. The Pentagon just can't keep a secret. Here's the quote. As national security disasters go, the Pentagon leaks were complete. But as great a scandal as the secret's deluge might be, the greater scandal is how lax the Pentagon appears to be with such monumentally confidential information that it could be posted on free-form internet sites. Jason.
Absolutely, totally, completely true. The operating systems that they're dealing with are so old. I know that there are places in the Pentagon that are still running off of Windows 95, for goodness sake. You can't even get it. Yes, it's true. You cannot even get this stuff serviced. It just a few years ago, they were using card punches. When you got a promotion in the military, you had to send it to somebody at the Pentagon who put it on a card punch. This generation doesn't even know what a card punch is. And this is how the military is so woefully behind on technology.
Yeah, that can't be, because China's ready. They're thirsty. They may want to fight soon. Everything needs to be up to par with technology. We need to be leading. Doesn't seem like a hard conclusion to come to.
We're not.
Jason Chaffetz,
We're not.
No. Thank you very much. Prices are still very high under President Biden, despite a slight cooling of overall inflation. Yeah, and that could mean the Fed will raise rates again. Plus, the Biden administration pushing some drastic new rules for gas-powered cars.
It ought to be the market that decides it, not government. And that's where we have this great falling out. This administration is so wed to this radical leftist environmental movement. There is no stopping them.
The market, that would be all of us. They're not going to let us decide. They've proven it. Critics call it overreach, and polling shows Americans are not on board. Steve Forbes. Body cam footage of Monday's deadly bank shooting, and it shows the first two responding officers exchanging gunfire with the shooter. Police say the gunman ambushed them at the scene. Officer Nicholas Wilt and C.J. Galloway were both shot. Wilt is in critical condition. He was shot in the head. We pray for both of them. Louisville's deputy police chief says this.
You can see the tension in that video. You can understand the stress that those officers are going through. Response wasn't perfect, but it was exactly the response we needed. I think I would love to have either one of those officers ride with me any day. They did absolutely exactly what they needed to do to save lives. Once officers arrived on scene, not another person was shot. Not a single person received any further injury.
You know, the details of that are just amazing. Support our officers. 5 people were killed. 8 were injured in that shooting. You see those who perished there on the big wall. And we'll just take a moment in their memory. The Environmental Protection Agency is announcing right now, actually it is happening at this moment, their most dramatic restrictions yet. The new rules would target tailpipe emissions and require as much as 67% of new vehicles sold to be electric by 2032. Republicans say the proposal goes way too far.
The gas stove thing was one. Now we have this thing with they're dealing with EVs, making sure everybody buys them, even though nobody wants them. And the bigger issue is most Americans can't afford them. I don't believe the EPA has this authority. But what the EPA has consistently been doing since its creation is just expanding its authority regardless of what Congress actually said their intent was. We need to pump the brakes. I do intend that pun, and then we got to reverse course.
Fox Business correspondent Grady Trimble live for us at the EPA headquarters. Grady.
Hey, Harris, we're expecting to hear from EPA Administrator Michael Regan any minute now. He's expected to announce these proposed regulations that the EPA, the Biden administration, says will drastically reduce CO2 emissions and get more Americans behind the wheels of electric vehicles. The goal, as you stated, is to have electric vehicles make up more than 2/3 of all new vehicle sales by 2032. But there are some questions about whether that might be too ambitious, whether it's actually easily doable. On top of concerns about the cost of EVs, whether there are enough chargers, and whether the power grid can handle all of these new vehicles, the move to electric could also give more power to China. That's where most EV batteries come from, as you know. And Chinese companies also have a hand in building new EV battery plants right here in the U.S.
We can't put ourselves in a position where the supply chain is going to be controlled by the Chinese Communist Party. Now is the time to position America and our allies to be competitive in that industry and not cede it to the Chinese Communist Party.
The White House certainly has a long way to go to meet its EV goals. Right now, only about 6% of all new vehicles sold are electric. The administration claims that these new rules will spark a manufacturing renaissance in the United States. But Harris, this is likely only the beginning. Right now, it's a proposal. They'll become final either later this year or early next year. It applies to model year 2027 through 2032 vehicles, but we'll see if it actually happens because it'll likely face challenges in the courts as well. Harris?
Okay, so they're coming for us. Good to see you, Grady. Thank you. Steve Forbes, Forbes Media Chairman and Editor-in-Chief. Look, you just said something off camera that's really troubling. That not only does China, and Grady reported that, make most of the batteries, there's a reason for that.
Well, China controls the resources, not only in China itself, but also in Africa. They've been making deals there in terms of controlling mineral resources with governments for years.
Belt Road.
And try to get a mine in this country. This whole thing for going electric requires massive amounts of mining to make that kind of change. And so it's just physically not doable. And so the administration the other day put in rules that make a lithium mine proposal moot in this country. So they want to go electric, but they don't supply the needs to do it. And there's also a very real question as to whether going EVs is really going to help the environment when you see what it's going to do to mining and ripping up the earth.
Mining, ripping up the earth, and grid problems in epic proportions that we're already
in California.
Yes, we're already having them.
You know, they wreck the grid by forcing these so-called renewables that don't really work very well. And then they say don't use it because we might have blackouts. Hello, leave the grid alone. And people don't want it. You know, back 100 years ago, we had a boom in filling stations in this country as the car came along, done by private enterprise, over 100,000 in the 1920s. Now they say government has to force you to put in these EV charging stations.
And people
don't want them.
I was just going to say it. 6% of all new cars are EV. That is a huge sign that people don't want this. You know, I know you remember. Back in the 70s when they said to protect the ozone layer, you can't use spray deodorant, and the whole country was getting behind this. This is not that. This is not the country saying the government saying we've done all the research, this is what it's going to take. That's not what this is.
No, not at all. And the fact that they have to keep forcing people to do it shows that, again, people don't want it because they don't like the short distances. They don't like having to charge an hour, hour and a half. A lot of people don't have garages to charge these things. And in terms of going on these renewables, a typical wind farm, a couple of typical wind farms, talk about recycling, have more unrecyclable plastics than all the straws in the world, plastic straws in the world. And so it's just, when you look at the actual physics, and that's what I hope the Republicans do, lay out in detail where are these minerals coming from? What's it going to take to do? What do you do with these 1,000-pound batteries when they have to be recycled?
What do you do?
Good question. They don't know. So answer those questions before you go down this path.
You get into an accident and the battery burns, you got to buy a new one.
Oh, and you hope you get out alive, because putting out a battery fire is no easy matter.
Wow. You know, you mentioned something, though, with this lithium that people really need to pay attention to. How can you say that you're green if you've got to cut up the earth to make the batteries? That's counterintuitive.
And a lot of in Africa, they use child labor to get some of this these minerals, digging by hands. Where's the outrage in those human rights violations?
There you go. The new inflation report out today shows prices are still very high. Overall, though, inflation slowed slightly. The inflation rate at 5% year over year, far above the Federal Reserve's 2% target. So they are going to hike those rates like never before, potentially. Food prices alarmingly high for everyday Americans. Groceries up 8% from last year. Everyday foods like eggs, bread, cereal, much pricier. And many are blaming President Biden.
When it comes to the economy, one of the reasons that 70% of Americans don't feel good about this economy is, Sean, they're losing money. Every single month for the last 22 months that Joe Biden has been in office, middle-class families in America have been squeezed and are losing money. They're getting poorer.
So, Steve, you know, raising the interest rates apparently not really having an effect on what we do at the grocery store and everywhere else, because other services are very high right now, too. What gets at that?
Well, the Federal Reserve, unfortunately, thinks the way you fight inflation is by depressing the economy. And eventually that will work, because if you don't have money to buy things, guess what? Prices will come down.
Yeah,
depression
indeed.
And so the way you fight inflation is stabilize the value of the dollar. The Fed did it in the 1990s, so this isn't something new. But they're deliberately depressing the economy. That means they're going to raise interest rates, and that means we have tough times ahead. And I'm surprised the market's held up as well as it has, given the storm clouds that are coming from a central bank that doesn't know what it's doing, a government that is putting on these crazy regulations. You know, they're now going after air conditioners. You know, the real reason why they're going after air conditioners, because that's what makes Texas what it is. Without the air conditioner, Texas people couldn't live there.
Wow. Well, or Arizona. Or New Mexico. I mean, Arizona in the summer. Yeah, that's insane. Stable value of the dollar. Can you call them?
I've tried, and I sent them my book, Inflation, free of charge. And but no central banker discusses a stable value for a currency. Yeah. It's like having a clock that doesn't have a number of minutes each day. It's
well,
nuts.
The central banker has something that we don't have: stable money. Personally, right?
Oh, they do just fine. Even though the Federal Reserve now is losing money because they have all of these low-interest bonds, and they're paying banks 4.5% to park their reserves there. So a central bank that can print money is now losing money. Boy, that is a historic first.
Yes, that is a historic first.
Shows how crazy these people are.
Steve Forbes, thank you very much. Great to have you in focus. Republicans are fighting to protect female athletes with new legislation to keep biological males out of women's sports. However, Democrats say they will vote against it. Plus, we've heard the denials time and time again. President Biden says he has no knowledge of his son Hunter Biden's business dealings. But a new review of White House visitor logs are casting major doubt on the president's claim of "I knew nothing." Florida Congressman Greg Steube is in focus next. Great to see him.
Anything having to do with Ukraine?
I've never spoken to my son about his overseas business dealings.
I don't know what he was doing. I did not know he was on the board of that company. I've never discussed my business or their business, my sons or daughters. I have never discussed with my son or my brother or anyone else anything having to do with their businesses, period.
Do you think he sounds convincing? You know, this could be a case of he doesn't remember. We've heard the president repeatedly deny any knowledge of his son Hunter's business dealings. However, a new review of White House visitor logs shows he's either lying or has forgotten, potentially. It shows that 7 people from Hunter Biden's now defunct investment firm visited the White House more than 80 times when Joe Biden was vice president. Names on the list include Hunter's longtime business partner, Eric Schwerin, who made 27 visits. John Robinson Walker, known as Rob, visited at least 16 times. Walker's name popped up last month when House Oversight Committee Republicans obtained records showing several Biden family members received more than $1 million in payments linked to Walker and their Chinese business ventures in 2017. Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer with this.
It's very concerning, and I think Joe Biden's going to have a lot of explaining to do with respect to how many countries his family was influence peddling in and how many members of his family were involved in this influence.
All right. We are hoping with technology to get the lawmaker who's pressing forward with a couple of things on Capitol Hill. Congressman Steube of the great state of Florida. We're having some situations with technology right now that we're going to try to work out. Of course, he's a member of the House Select Subcommittee on the Weaponization of the Federal Government and a retired Army Airborne Infantry and JAG officer. And as soon as we can get Congressman Steube up on the air, we will do so. I do want to show you what's going on as they force us to drive electric vehicles by 2032. The EPA right now making that announcement. And, you know, critics of this say it's so drastic, it leaves no room for transition. And you just heard Steve Forbes and me talking about this. If we are going to transition, we have to be really, really honest about what this actually costs the Earth. I mean, people who work for the EPA say they care about the planet. China mines the minerals and the resources to make the batteries for the electric vehicles. And when they burn, I mean, it's really bad for the Earth, one. It's so bad for your wallet because it's going to be another added expense that you don't have other than buying gas right now if you're driving a gas-powered car. But only 6% of people are driving EVs right now anyway. This thing is not hot. I don't know if they can force people to be hot on this issue by 2032, but we shall see. So we're showing you this as it happens. This is history in the making, because this speeds up even what governors, Democrat governors, are doing right now in their individual states. All right, another state lawmaker is ditching the Democrats and joining up with Republicans. 2 states now with a GOP veto-proof majority and ready to push through some key legislation. Plus, even somebody who's on the left, late-night host, is mocking the president for this recent gaffe.
I got big Easter news. Joe Biden can lay eggs. Serve them up scrambled or sit on them for a while, raise a beautiful flock of little baby Joes. Peep, peep, peep.
You know, there's some people around the world who just don't think Biden is funny or cute when he makes the gaffes. And I bring you minor incursion. And Putin invaded Ukraine. A UK parliament member apparently warning Biden to keep it together on the world stage. We'll see if Biden can do that. Power panel next. On Fox and Friends this morning, announcing he's launching a 2024 Presidential Exploratory Committee. Here's Senator Tim Scott.
What brought me to this moment is my Faith in America tour. I have found that people are starving for hope. They're starving for an optimistic, positive message that is anchored in conservative values.
Senator Scott is scheduled to hold events in the early voting state of Iowa today. And right now, 4 Republicans have already declared their candidacies. The list of those kind of on the sidelines waiting to do it is really long, but here's the official list so far. Former President Donald Trump, Nikki Haley, Asa Hutchinson, and tech entrepreneur Vivek Ramaswamy. Fox News is teaming up with Young America's Foundation and Rumble to host the very first GOP primary debate of the presidential cycle for 2024. It's scheduled for August. We don't have an exact date this August yet. In Milwaukee. By the way, that's also the host city for the 2024 Republican National Convention. President Biden is in the UK, as you know. He's been making jokes in Ireland, so on and so forth. His habit of making verbal mistakes is costing him among our allies now. The Daily Mail reports a member of Parliament told him to avoid making any clumsy anti-British jokes. She had to tell the President of the United States this. Any such gaffes would be mercilessly weaponized for political gain. Just this week, President Biden with a doozy of an interview.
Will you be taking part in the Easter egg rolls planning on after 2024?
Well, I plan on at least 3 or 4 more Easter egg rolls.
At least 3 or 4 more?
Maybe 5.
Maybe 5?
maybe 6. What the hell?
Are you saying that you would be taking part in our upcoming election in 2024?
Well, I'll either be rolling an egg or being the guy who's pushing them out.
Excuse me? Even liberal late-night host Steve Colbert couldn't let it go.
That's right, Jack. I got big Easter news. Joe Biden can lay eggs. Easy as pie. No, I push them right out the cloaca, okay? Serve them up scrambled or sit on them for a while, raise a beautiful flock of little baby Joes. Peep, peep, peep. Point is, I am mentally fit to once again run for president of the United States. What's going on? Where's Jill? Marco, Jillo.
When you lose Colbert. Power panel now, former executive director of America Rising PAC, and Kevin Walling, former Biden campaign surrogate. Boy, if you had to be out there now, what would you be saying? I mean, the president sounding ridiculous there. I mean, I know your side of the political aisle is a little bit confused about who has eggs and who can lay them in terms of gender, but what is going on with him?
Listen, Harris, it was a cute moment with Al Roker. He's the more important thing is I think he's indicated, as he has said repeatedly, that he's running for re-election in 2024, and he's fired up for that race. But listen, you know, the president just wrapped up his speech at the Belfast University. He just landed in Dublin, Ireland. He met with both parties in Northern Ireland, which is an important message that he's bringing in terms of unity and celebration of the 25 years of the Good Friday Accords and the work that still needs to be done, especially in Northern Ireland with those different factions. It was gaffe-free, it was spot on, it was compassionate, and it was an important message. And now he continues his tour in the Republic of Ireland.
Yeah, when that lawmaker felt the need to publicly say, don't do this, about the president and then to him reportedly, what does that say to you, Cassie?
Yeah, well, just as Kevin had to point out right there, it was gaffe-free. The fact that that is even something that we point out in the President of the United States remarks just tells you that people expect him to make mistakes. They expect him to say things that they're going to have to clean up after. And every time he does it, it's a weakness. Every time he does it, it exposes a vulnerability for the United States. And you're seeing countries, China cozying up with Russia. You're seeing President Macron from France last week saying, we need to move away from a dependency on the United States, the EU as a whole. And he took some blowback in his own right from those comments. But the fact that leaders abroad see our president as a weak leader, and that's an opportunity to exploit that vulnerability, that's bad news for Americans and for America. And that's the bigger problem that these gaffes expose.
Well, I'm curious to see what you'll say about this, Kevin. Another state Democrat in Louisiana just jumped ship to join the Republican Party, further cementing the party's stronghold in that state. State Representative Jerry Lancome announced his move on Monday. He didn't offer a reason at that point. He follows State Representative Francis Thompson, who switched recently and gave up the GOP and gave the GOP a supermajority. North Carolina Republicans now also have veto-proof power after State Representative Tricia Cotham announced she was joining the Republican Party. Just last week, Cotham said the Democratic Party has become unrecognizable to her. Observers are calling it a political earthquake. North Carolina Republicans are now pushing ahead with school choice legislation and other education reforms opposed by Democrats. Kevin, can you defend that? Why are they leaving?
Well, my friend Cassie will have to tell me if this is part of a secret Republican plan to increase their ranks because they're not doing too well at the ballot box when it comes to voters. But listen, I think it's more of an indication of the political standing of these particular lawmakers. Nearly 150 elected officials have changed parties in the last 20 years or so. This is something that's actually more routine than ever. And I think what you're seeing is the Democrats becoming Republicans are in states where Republicans have control. They want more power. They want to be able to, But
you're supposed to be able, as a politician, to talk to everybody. Cassie, he asked you a direct question, though. And so, Kevin, I want her, with the time that we have, to give Cassie a chance to answer your question.
Oh, it's a tough job out there for Kevin some days. His party doesn't make it easy on him. But I would say, what's wrong with crossing the aisle? You shouldn't have to. You shouldn't have to switch parties. You could just switch your vote. If you don't agree with where your party's position is, you should be able to switch your vote. But the fact that they are done carrying the water for their party, particularly the National Democrats, who are focused on all of these issues that are turning a blind eye to the issues that are actually at peril in our own backyards, being able to afford your groceries, being able to have a say over the curriculum in your children's school. Those are the issues, and that's what's propelled them to switch their party, and that's really telling.
Wow, that is, because those are almost immutables right now for Democrats. They're really, really hard to change. Kevin Walling, we like having you too.
I love it,
both of you.
Harris.
Good to see you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Back to new questions about Hunter Biden's business partners and new visitor logs, which show 7 former associates went to the White House more than 80 times when Joe Biden was vice president. That's a hard list to get on. That's a lot of access to a former VP. And now current president. Florida Congressman Greg Steube, member of the House Select Subcommittee on the Weaponization of the Federal Government, and a retired Army Airborne Infantry and JAG officer. Great to have you on the program today. We worked out the snafu and the technology. Okay, 80 times is a lot of access to a VP.
It is. And I can't
think of anyone that I've met with 80 times in an official capacity at my official office in Washington, D.C., and the arrogance and the level of the meetings, there wasn't at private places. They were bringing these individuals to the White House, and we know from evidence that Tucker unearthed with Bobolinsky's testimony that Biden was supposed to get a cut of 10% of their business dealings, and Biden time and time again saying, oh, I had no knowledge of Hunter's business dealings. I never met with anybody. And now we see the actual facts and the arrogance. They just met with these individuals right there at the White House at the VP's office. The American people are smarter than that. They see right through the lies and the deception. And I really hope and pray, and I believe that Comer and the Oversight Committee is going to dig into this so the American people can see once and for all exactly what happened.
How is it that this current president gets away with saying that he didn't know anything about this, and no one on the left, no one says, well, is it your memory? Because if that's the case, your fitness for president might be in question.
You got bigger problems.
Yeah, I mean, that's a bigger overall situation. I don't know how it doesn't go there, though, if in fact they believe him.
Well, the mainstream media is not going to talk about it at all because they are just propaganda for the left and don't want to bring any attention to this. So thankfully, shows like yourself and you are bringing attention to this on Fox, and I think that's important. But the left's not going to say anything because they're so locked into each other and don't want anything to bring down what is the White House and the corruption that is there, that they don't want to say anything to all that into compromise.
Well, it's hard to do when the facts are blaring. I mean, you can't just erase those visitor logs. And 80 times, like you said, you've never experienced anything like that in all the years that you've been in politics. All right, let's get to this. This is a bill that you're getting ready to introduce, or you have introduced, I should say. House Republicans are setting up a vote next week on it. It would keep biological males out of women's and girls' sports at colleges and public schools across America. It comes as the
Chỉ sau một tuần, hãy cùng kênh Tin Nhanh khám phá ngay bạn nhé! Nguyên liệu các bạn cần chuẩn bị trong phương pháp này bao gồm: thứ nhất, các bạn cần chuẩn bị là hành tím. Nguyên liệu thứ hai các bạn cần chuẩn bị trong phương pháp này đó là một nhánh gừng. Gừng các bạn nên chọn loại gừng bánh tẻ, có nghĩa là không quá non và cũng không quá già là tốt nhất. Thứ ba các bạn cần chuẩn bị là dầu ô liu. Dầu ô liu là dầu ăn mà gia đình chúng ta sử dụng hàng ngày. Và nguyên liệu cuối cùng vô cùng quen thuộc đối với chúng ta, đó chính là kem đánh răng. Như vậy phương pháp này chúng ta sử dụng 4 nguyên liệu chính, bao gồm hành tím, gừng, dầu ô liu và kem đánh răng. Với 4 nguyên liệu trên thì cách để chúng ta làm như sau. Đầu tiên là bạn hãy sơ chế gừng bằng cách bạn sẽ rửa sạch phần bên ngoài của củ gừng đi. Đặc biệt khi rửa gừng các bạn sẽ rửa thật sạch, thật kỹ ở các cái kẽ của củ gừng, vì đây là nơi bám nhiều đất cát và bụi bẩn nhất. Sau khi đã rửa sạch xong rồi thì bạn hãy dùng dao và cạo sơ qua cái lớp vỏ bên ngoài cũng như là cái phần sâu của củ gừng. Vì gừng chúng ta sẽ sử dụng nước cốt nên các bạn cũng không cần cạo kỹ vỏ bên ngoài lắm đâu. Việc tiếp theo là bạn hãy thái thật nhỏ củ gừng của chúng ta ra. Đây chính là bát gừng sau khi đã được thái nhỏ. Tiếp theo là đối với hành tím thì các bạn sẽ bóc thật sạch lớp vỏ bên ngoài. Các bạn sẽ